All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another one of the UC Davis C-STEM Center's Engaged Learning Spotlight webinars. My name is Daniel Ryan. I'm the Education Service Manager for the UC Davis C-STEM Center. I also have Professor Harry Chang here with me. Professor Chang, will you say hi really quick?
Hi, my name is Harry Chang. I'm a professor here at UC Davis. I'm also UC Davis C-STEM Center Director. Thank you and welcome everyone.
Excellent. Thank you, Professor Chang. In addition, I have two remarkable individuals from Orange Unified School District here with me today. They're going to be sharing about the Orange Unified School District implementation of C-STEM and the successes and impacts that they've had on their students. I have Principal Joe Erven here with us, so if you could say hi really quick.
Yep. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us.
And then I also have Mr. Greg Miller, a third grade teacher at McPherson Magnet.
Hello.
Excellent. So the purpose of our Engaged Learning Spotlight webinars is to really kind of put a little bit of a spotlight and observe some of the successes that the partner districts we work with have had implementing the C-STEM program and engaging their students through hands-on computer programming and robotics activities. In a lot of cases, specifically focusing on math abilities, and then in other cases focusing on just developing those technology skills. So if you're interested in getting started with anything like this, the C-STEM program and really changing the way your students think about learning, we're also putting together some really intense summer professional development. It's all going to be done remote. I'll put the link in the chat for anybody who's interested. And it's a really great way to really learn about the C-STEM program and how a teacher can get started, even if they've never done anything like this before. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Principal Erven. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and I'm sure they have a spectacular presentation ready for us. So, Mr. Erven.
Perfect. Well, I'll start by sharing my screen. Thanks again for having us. I'm going to start the presentation today, and then I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Miller, and he's going to kind of talk about some components as well. So today, we're going to be talking about C-STEM Robotics at McPherson Magnet. That is where I've been the principal for 6 years. We are a kinder through 8th grade public school with a STEM magnet focus. Okay, there we go. Today we're going to be talking about basically 4 components: the history of C-STEM at McPherson Magnet, our decision to bring it to the primary grades because initially we started it in the middle school arena, our elementary model, and then Mr. Miller is going to be talking about 3rd grade implementation and the 3rd through 5th grade continuum. So we are a kinder through 8th grade public school. Again, our magnet focus is on STEM education. 8 years ago, McPherson Magnet, along with some other schools within the Orange Unified School District, received funding to help students get algebra ready by 8th grade. So one way we did that was by participating with C-STEM Robotics. Just so that people can kind of see our demographics, these are the demographics of our school. We are 48% Hispanic, 34% white, 11% Asian, 3% Filipino, 2% 2 or more races, and then 1% or lower of those rest of the demographics. Implementation of C-STEM was done in conjunction with our CTE, Career and Technical Education Department, as well as Irvine Valley College with Mary Kim. Originally, she had received some money to help with the C-STEM implementation. We had 2 teachers trained in C-STEM robotics, Mr. Miller and a robotics computer science teacher. Initially, C-STEM, we ran it as an elective course, and we really were targeting to those students that had an interest in robotics or were excelling in their math. So it wasn't something that all of our students were doing. It was a very small group of students initially. Each year, as we ran this course, the small group of students participated in that Roboblockly competition in Southern California at University High School. Over time, we continued to track these students, and early on we noticed that they all had a high level of math achievement after taking the C-STEM course. Again, we weren't really initially designing the course for math instruction. It was really as an elective to keep students engaged in robotics. And this really started our conversation about bringing the program to a larger group at McPherson. We wanted to get more students engaged in the program. So in 2017-18, Mr. Miller, he started teaching C-STEM robotics in his 3rd grade classes. We were able to take these students to a Roboblockly competition thanks to Mary Kim. And these 3rd graders presented on how they had been using C-STEM in the math classroom with Mr. Miller. And here's a video of one of them talking about his experience with C-STEM. This is one of our 3rd graders. Here we go.
My name is Jacob Gray, and my favorite part about robotics is that it's always a new challenge whenever a new map comes out every year. And every year I do all the maths, and I started this year, and every year I'm hoping that I'll get to do robotics again.
So he was part of our first class of 3rd graders that were doing this. And it's great to hear him talk about those C-STEM mats. They were using the middle school mats at the time in 3rd grade. And they were very motivated to keep trying to do better at those mats. So they actually got to show the University High School, all those schools, what they have been doing as 3rd graders with those competition mats. So, continuing with the history of C-STEM at our school, we pushed on and slowly developed our middle school course into a co-taught course. We had a math and robotics teacher in there. The math teacher brought in her geometry students that year, and McPherson won the state and regional Roboblockly competition. So our decision to bring C-STEM into primary grades, after seeing the success of students both in the middle and 3rd grade, we began as a team developing a plan to bring C-STEM robotics permanently to our 3rd through 5th grade students as a supplement to the math curriculum. Mr. Miller, he is our 3rd grade teacher. He began teaching C-STEM as a regular component of his lessons. And each year we saw an increase in our 3rd grade math scores. These are our SBAC scores for our 3rd grade students. At this point, we made the decision to continue C-STEM robotics and make it a continuum from 3rd through 8th grade. And you can see there from 2015 to 2019, this was our 3rd grade math scores on the SBAC. We went from 51% advanced proficient to 88% advanced proficient last year. And the 88%, those were some of the highest scores within the Orange Unified School District for 3rd grade math students. So we were able to see some great gains, and I think a part of this is definitely due to the work that our team has been doing with C-STEM robotics. So the elementary model, we developed a plan to have math specialists at 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades. The math specialists will teach 3 cohorts per day, kind of similar to a middle school model. So basically our students are going to be, this year they've been rotating between a math specialist, an English specialist, and a history science specialist. Over the summer of 2019, the 3 math specialists were trained at McPherson Magnet so that everyone was ready to teach the content. Over the course of this year, so this was our first year of full implementation, we created several competition days in the cafeteria where 3rd through 5th grade students have the opportunity to compete against one another. And here's just an example of one of those competition days.
So we're trying to make it a little bit better every year.
Well, you get the idea there. It's a very dynamic situation. The kids did an amazing job when we did these competitions. They had their rulers, they did their programming, and we were able to give out prizes for those groups that were able to get through the mazes. So we have just completed our first year with a rotational model using C-STEM Robotics. Obviously, due to the COVID closure, we will not be getting our math scores back. We are really looking forward to seeing how our math scores were this year, considering we are going to this new model of having a math specialist at our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade levels. This year, Mr. Miller was also named a C-STEM Teacher of the Year due to his work with 3rd grade and C-STEM Robotics. And now I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Miller.
So our history, Joe already said we had C-STEM in our middle school. We're a K-8 school. And so I already knew about it. I actually had the friend that was teaching that class. And out of the blue, I got an email that said that the C-STEM curriculum had been expanded from kindergarten up through 14. And I was thinking, all right, great. And I went to Joe, and I wasn't sure if that was going to be a good idea or not. I didn't want to step on our middle school's toes, and he said that would be a great idea. Turns out they had a free training. If I showed up for the weekend, they'd give me free robots, and I was super excited about that. It turns out that they said that because we were so young, we wouldn't get them, but ultimately they did, and Joe came up with some CTE funding too. So it was 4 years ago that I started using it in my regular class. I used it for everybody, but I also had a core group of kids that were, you know, in the after-school daycare program, and they may or may not have older kids that were in our middle school, so that, you know, they could stay after school before parents picked them up an hour later. And so it was great. They C-STEM asked us to present at Roboblockly at University High, and Joe showed you a short video clip of that. That was basically the first year. The next couple years, we bought more robots, and we bought more mats. The kids absolutely love, you know, being a part of those challenges. They learned a whole lot more math. They learned a whole lot more coding. I actually had pretty much zero experience with coding before I got involved, but now I'm pretty decent. We partnered with our middle school classes. We got better and better. We presented at our school STEAM night, at open house, and it became more and more a part of my third grade classroom. Until this year, we were totally self-contained, you know, a regular elementary school sort of thing. And last year, Joe piloted a great program that we have where we have specialists in each subject. So it's become an integral part of math for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade for us. As things went on, we've had the robots from day one. We started doing Roboblockly, which is virtual robots. We've done more and more coding, and it's been crazy how well that it is. I hadn't even anticipated this, but how well the kids learn regular 3rd grade math and advanced 3rd grade math. Yeah, so and Joe said it before, even 3rd graders have, they've been doing the stuff that were intended for middle schoolers a while back. So they learn to measure, they make calculations that are way, way, way bigger than regular 3rd grade. Standards call for understanding what repeated addition is, how that relates to multiplication. Can you go one more slide? How that deals with not that far. How that relates to division and right angles, multiples of 90 degrees, right angles, fractions, and all that stuff. So the biggest deal, so on the screen right now it says why the success. The biggest deal for me is that it creates the intrinsic motivation that kids may or may not have for learning math. And it's really, you know, when you're talking about a young mind, it's a big deal to make that robot move from point A to point B. It's huge. Joe put on the screen that the video was actually, he took that, he was inspired by a Roboblockly video, and he created that in our cafeteria for a challenge. When those kids go in there, they're inspired. You can't just say in your regular math class, measure something. It's when you grab that little piece of a table and you have to, and the child understands that I'm going to measure something, it is a big deal to them. That's what motivates them to understand the math, and that's what motivates them to want to do the math. It's huge. I've had kids. My biggest story that I always talk about is there's a challenge that C-STEM did. Harry, maybe you can tell me, or Daniel, 2015 was one of the earlier ones called Disco. And think about third graders. The standard is they know what a right angle is. That's it. They know what it is. Nothing more. They don't know it's 90 degrees. My kids all of a sudden were going, okay, right angle is 90 degrees. What's a 180? And they think about skateboards and they go, that's what a 180 is. That's what a 360 is. And all of a sudden, you're totally roping these kids in to doing math. They wouldn't care otherwise. They absolutely love it. It's a huge part of their life, and they all of a sudden they're doing 360s, and I have to tell them, well, what about moving 3 times around? And they say, well, that's 360 times 3. And I said, yeah, go do it. And they said, we don't know how to multiply like that. I said, well, can you do it? And so they add it. They would not be willing to add that up otherwise, but they do it. It's huge. So it's fantastic. They're learning third grade, they're learning fourth grade, they're learning a little bit of fifth grade. And I wanted to talk about, Joe, can you do one more slide? One more?
I'm sorry.
There we go. So the biggest thing to me is this is what really grabs me about C-STEM. Whatever the standards are, you know, we have the 8 standards for mathematical practice that go beyond every grade. So what's fantastic to me about C-STEM is it doesn't matter what grade it is, it hits everything. So first one, make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. Well, every little task or challenge, you have to get it, you have to understand it. Reasoning abstractly and quantitatively, multiple ways. Well, the standard algorithm, I'm a math teacher, it's always going to be critically important, but you also have to understand what's going on, like what's happening beyond the math. Viable arguments and reasoning. Think about, this is what I did, what are you doing? Is my approach better? Is yours approach better? What's good about what I'm doing, and how is your approach better? Those are huge things towards the engineers of our future. One more. Modeling with mathematics. I already said multiplications, repeated addition. This is just for third grade. It's going to be, you're going to get everything from grade after grade after grade. A huge understanding about math in third, fourth, fifth grade is understanding that multiplication and division involve equal groups. So you see a ton of that. Tools, it's going to be a pencil, paper. They're going to, I mean, my kids, they use protractors. That's not third grade. They asked to use it because they know that that's going to help them move the robot from point A to point B. Biggest thing just for third grade is just using a ruler and a yardstick. I mean, that's humongous. One more. And Joe showed, and you can see it on the screen right now, the challenge that Joe put up there. That was a Roboblockly inspired challenge that he created. And you can see that the robot had to move through more or less through a maze. So in terms of precision, thinking about the coding that goes beyond that, every time that the robot has to make its way through that path, when the kids are trying to figure out what's going on, if they're off by 2 inches, they have to go and adjust every little thing so that it moves forward. That's a huge thing about in terms of precision and structure and regularity. Daniel?
Excellent. Thank you so much. I do have a couple of quick follow-up questions before we get to the audience questions, because I know there were at least a couple. Mr. Miller, could you talk a little bit about the C-STEM platforms that we have? So C-STEM has 2 different key platforms. We have Roboblockly and we have C-STEM Studio with the CHIDE and the written coding. Now, for younger students, typically they tend to start off in Roboblockly and then eventually transition into the CHIDE. Can you talk a little bit about how your class has been making that progression and how you use those platforms in your classroom?
We actually took the exact opposite approach. We, for my kid, and it's because, I guess it's maybe a little bit of a fluke. You know, I knew about C-STEM because Joe in our middle school already had it going. So I knew about the robots. I guess Roboblockly came to me afterwards. But what I typically do with my kids is I'll teach them some of the code, and on Roboblockly there's the show the CH code, and I kind of get the kids to I get them to do as much as you possibly can with this, and then transfer it over to the CHIDE, and then make some modifications based on that, and it works out great. You know, if you're thinking about little kids, 8, 9 years old, one of the concerns that some teachers might have is that, hey, how much can they do? You know, we're talking about little kids and their fingers and the keyboard and all that, but C-STEM has some fantastic text predictive functions that really do make it easy. And yeah, so I guess I take it from there. I do a little bit of both. My advice to the kids is do whatever you can on Roboblockly, transfer it over, but just know that it's not really practical to go back. So do what you can and go from there.
Excellent, thank you. And then kind of adding to that a little bit, have you noticed that your students prefer one platform over the other?
I think that the kids that are the most successful do exactly what I just said. Okay. They're going to start with Roboblockly and then take it over, because you know they learn copy paste, they learn whatever. I mean, you just can't go back. So drag and drop, it's really easy, and it's fantastic to get the kids started. But at some point, you know, what's the goal? The goal is not drag and drop long term. The goal is, can the kids code, right? And do the kids learn math? So, you know, that's kind of what I'm hoping for and moving toward.
Excellent, excellent. And then one more question for you. You talked a lot about how your students are getting more engaged and they're actually enjoying and wanting to learn the math because it's a useful tool for helping them solve these challenges. Have you seen any of that engagement kind of spilling out into other classrooms and getting other students excited as well, even if they're not directly in this class doing the C-STEM with you, like through maybe word of mouth of students and just kind of getting others excited?
Yeah, so word of mouth, that's probably the biggest thing. It's when my kids move on to the next year or two. So this is my 4th year of using C-STEM, and so my oldest kids are in 6th grade right now, and some of them are coming back and telling me, yeah, we're the best kids in the whole class. So they totally get it. They love it, and it really is. They have this robot, and them being able to make the robot do what it's supposed to do, that totally gets them excited about learning math. And they don't always even understand that they're learning math. They're just, well, maybe they do, but the point is that they're willing to do it, whereas otherwise they wouldn't even think about it.
And I think that's one of the reasons we were able to bring 4th and 5th grade into this arena, was because our 3rd graders were leaving Mr. Miller's class excited about C-STEM, and we didn't want to have that drop off. So it was easy to then create that continuum because there was such a level of excitement for continuing it through 4th and 5th grade as well.
Excellent, thank you. Professor Chang, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask before we turn it over to the audience? You're muted and we cannot hear you.
I would like to really thank Joe and Greg for your excellent work you have been done, and it is remarkable. And especially with your smart balanced test score from the 51% to the 88% of the exceeding the pass rate, which is about 72% of the increase of the score. Many years ago, when I talked with the CDE, the California Department of Education, people in charge of the STEM education, I asked them if for the C-STEM program considered will be successful in terms of the math improvement. They told me, if you can make a 5% improvement, that would be the great, 10% is would be amazing. So you actually achieved the 72% of increase. So that's something amazing work you have been doing. Let's also validate our concept using the coding the robotics to learn the math seamlessly and engaging the students. I just want to congratulate for all your excellent work your team has done. Okay. And I also want to add on, we are right now also working on the program to have the math activities integrating the kindergarten and always up. So now we have a common core aligned math activities from the kindergarten and up. You can take a look at our program, see if that also can fit into your program. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And then just really quick before we go into the full audience questions, I know you addressed a couple of questions in the chat, but I just wanted to get those in case anybody was missing those. So Carmen Chavez asked, what percentage of your students are SES?
Yeah, about 25% of our students are free and reduced lunch.
Excellent, thank you. And then Connie Green asked about the enrollment criteria for the magnet school.
Yeah, we have no enrollment requirements. So we are a kinder through 8th grade. Most of our students come to us in kinder and then most of our students stay with us through 8th grade. The only requirement is that they attend the Orange Unified School District they're within the boundaries. But other than that, there's no entrance requirements. There's no test to get in or anything like that.
Excellent, thank you. So another question that I have in the chat from Mary Hinton. Mary, if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask that question, or I can ask it for you.
Hi, Joe, it's Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Thank you, Daniel. I just wanted to clarify, so Mr. Miller then teaches the third grade C-STEM to all of your third graders because you've now departmentalized?
So this is the first year that we've departmentalized, and it is an integral part of our, maybe Joe, you can talk about our FIT program, but
Yeah.
it's an integral part of one of our classes, but I included it in all three.
Yeah, and I think we try to include it in all three, but we have so what we did when we were talking about these rotational models is we wanted to give students the ability to accelerate as well. So students applied if they wanted to go into an accelerated version of our rotational model. We call it FIT. And so those students will get, those that elect to go into FIT will get a higher percentage of C-STEM robotics, as well as some other supplemental curriculum.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Were there any other questions that the audience had?
I also have one question from the Alvin about, do you have to be a math teacher to successfully teach a C-STEM course? No, you don't have to be the math teacher. In fact, we have the course for the coding, robotics. We work with the CTE teachers. We work with science teachers. And we even have the English teachers working with us. They said that they can integrate like a video competition and the script writing and the storytelling into the English class as well. Okay. And also another question is, can I use the older boards from the past UC days to teach a PD? Yes, you can still using the oldest robot you received probably 8 or 7 years ago, and to control the hardware. Also, you have to update the firmware, but you can still use those older robots. In fact, in our C-STEM center, we always using our oldest robot. So if you receive C-STEM training, we're using the oldest robot, so it still works fine.
Yeah, we still use our old robots too. Our middle school program uses our older robots.
Yeah, so that's like 7 or 8 years ago, right? Yeah. So there's another question: how much cost are they looking forward to implement it, say for one class? So there's a variety of different ways to implement the program. At the lowest cost, you really don't need a robot. So therefore, you can use the virtual robot to start with, and using either our RoboSam or Roboblockly. And then you can have the 1 or 2 robots for the demonstration to see actually the student write the same code to control those virtual robots are able to use to control the hardware robot. And then you can have, if you get the budget, then you can have the 2 students share 1 robot hardware. Or in many cases, we have schools, they have the 1-to-1 robot. So each student have their own robot. And in fact, those virtual simulations, the one student can control multiple robots. So then you can have the multiple students collaborating. So then they each have their own robot, but then now they can put them together for the collaboration. So there's a variety of different ways of implementation. As you have the more budget, then you can get the more hardware, and as you move forward.
So just to summarize that a little bit, there are annual recurring costs for the C-STEM educational license or subscription that includes all of our curriculum, our support, and all of our resources. That's $600 for an elementary school, $800 for a middle school, and $1,000 for a high school. That's a site license, so it covers all students, teachers, classes, etc. in the school. And so that's the main annual recurring fee. Then there's software licenses that are, I think, $300 for a 35 machine lab license per year. In addition to that, it's just the hardware investment. So minimum costs starting are on the order of approximately $1,000 a year, plus whatever hardware you decide to invest in. And as we were saying just a few minutes ago, the hardware is usable for many, many years in all of the in-person PDs that we do, which unfortunately we can't do those right now, but in all the in-persons that we do, when I travel, they get beaten up by TSA and all the other entities that are helping me move the luggage around. We're still using robots from 7 or 8 years ago. So they're very durable, last a long time, and it's a really, really great way to get your students more engaged. I also wanted to add just a little bit to a couple of minutes ago, the question came up, if you have to be a math teacher to successfully teach the C-STEM course. I just wanted to add that we have a lot of elective teachers or robotics teachers. We even have some librarians running like lunch programs or after school programs using the C-STEM coding and robotics just as an extra activity for the students, and they're still seeing the same kinds of results where the students are using these mathematical terms and making these measurements just to play with the robots, and that's helping build their math skills. So there is no requirement to have a math credential or anything else like that to be able to teach the C-STEM course.
But on the contrary, on the other hand, we work with a lot of the math teachers. More than 90% of the teachers we work with, they do not have any coding robotics experience before they work with us. In fact, all the presenters at this Engaged Learning Spotlight presenters, those teachers have no coding robotics experience before they work with us.
Yeah, I had pretty much zero coding experience, and I picked it up just fine. So,
yeah.
And my kids actually, some of the kids that are in 6th grade right now, they're probably actually better than me.
And then Portia also had a follow-up to that cost question about incentives or grants to offset the cost. We don't have any directly through the C-STEM Center, but a lot of schools and districts that we work with have gotten sponsorships from local companies or applied for some grant funding that they have opportunities through maybe CTE or other local organizations. So there's always opportunity. It's just a matter of what you can find that's available to your local community.
Yeah, we were able to purchase robot packages for each of my grade levels through the CTEIG grant, the CTEIG grant.
Some schools are using the Title I money and also using the money for the special ed students, and because this for improvement of the math education for some of the use for the students who are struggling.
And just in terms of independent type grants, if you were to start implementing Roboblockly or other components of C-STEM that don't require the actual robots, I think that would probably be the beginning of you laying the groundwork toward a grant for any of the other fundings that might be available. Just, hey, my kids are excited. All I need is money. Go from there.
Donors choose.
And one thing that a lot of, especially tech companies like about the program is that we are developing the students' 21st century skills. So the written coding that they're learning, it's industry standard. It's really preparing them for their future and building up the next generation of workforce in the tech industries. So there's extra incentive there for them to help fund these kinds of programs.
And for the groups that, are going to require you to state what you're doing and meeting the standards, well, the last couple slides that I included on there say, this is what we're doing to meet the mathematical standards. So you can include that kind of thing in your request for funding.
So thank you both so much for taking time out of your Tuesday morning to share with us what you're doing with the C-STEM program. We really greatly appreciate it, and we're really excited to see how the program continues to develop and grow through your school and district in the next couple of years.